Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped up a two-day state visit to North Korea, his first trip to Pyongyang since 2019. Now, the summit produced pledges to deepen cooperation, including military exchanges between the two sides. To reflect on the significance of it all, we have our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young in studio today. Welcome back, Soo-young.
Hi, Tammy. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So, Soo-young, after 2 days of meetings and events, let's recap the significance and the outcome of the summit.
Sure. So the most significant outcome that we saw, well, really the significance that we saw today was the reaffirmation of North Korea-China ties, with both sides using the summit to signal that their relationship remains a strategic priority. According to state media from both sides, President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to strengthen high-level exchanges and expand cooperation in areas including diplomacy, law enforcement and military affairs. Experts say Beijing wanted to use the visit to reaffirm its influence in Pyongyang at a time when North Korea's ties with Russia have notably expanded.
I think the closer Russia-North Korea relationship is giving China a greater sense of urgency in terms of making sure that China remains the preeminent partner for North Korea rather than Russia. At the moment when North Korea feels like it's got two options rather than just one, China wants to do extra goodwill gesture to make sure that China remains the preferred #1 option, if not the only option.
And they say that the visit comes at a time when Beijing is trying to shape the regional order after Xi's summits with Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Before he even landed in Pyongyang, Xi had already laid out the bigger message in 노동신문, closer strategic communication with North Korea, and a joint push for what Beijing calls a more multipolar world.
The image will be, and the supporting messaging out of Xinhua and other Chinese official and unofficial statements will be, China taking the lead, U.S. influence waning, a much more fairer and open world in a multilateral, not a bipolar or unipolar order. That's for everybody's benefit.
Then, Soo-young, what was North Korea hoping to gain from President Xi Jinping's visit?
Well, analysts say that for North Korea's part, it had more economic interests at hand. Since 2023, Pyongyang has expanded military cooperation with Moscow, providing weapons, ammunition, and troops linked to Russia's war efforts in Ukraine. But experts note that if the conflict eventually stabilizes or winds down, the economic benefits that North Korea receives from that relationship could diminish. That makes China increasingly important. China, of course, remains North Korea's largest trading partner and most capable of supporting its ventures in tourism, investment, as well as cross-border commerce.
North Korea's biggest concern is how to secure Chinese support once the Russia-Ukraine war eventually comes to an end. One example is the Wonsan Karma Resort project, which Kim Jong-un has personally prioritized. For that project to succeed, North Korea needs large numbers of Chinese tourists.
Now, one thing that drew attention was what was not mentioned, denuclearization. Soo-young, but military exchanges appeared in the summit outcome. How should we read this?
Yes, of course, that notable omission that you talked about from both the Chinese and North Korean readouts was any reference to denuclearization. Experts say that Beijing is not publicly endorsing North Korea's nuclear status, but at the same time, it's not challenging Pyongyang on the issue in the summit readouts.
My sense is there's not going to be a big breakthrough on denuclearization or transformation on Korean Peninsula issues. Xi is likely not to ask Kim Jong-un to engage with Lee Jae-myung because, Kim has made it clear it's an internal issue for North Korea, and this diplomacy will not be dictated by outsiders.
Instead, the statements focused on sovereignty, security and development interests, while also mentioning military exchanges. Now that has drawn attention in Seoul. The Unification Ministry said Tuesday that it was the first time it had identified a public reference to military sector exchanges in the North Korea-China summit context. Now, it remains unclear how far that cooperation could go, as neither Beijing nor Pyongyang has provided further details on that.
I imagine military cooperation between China and North Korea will, as with all military cooperation, start incrementally. Something about, for example, cooperation on joint ammunition and logistical support component parts, joint development, for example, as a way for China to pursue some degree of technology transfer to the North Korean side. And North Korean side would see that as a gesture of confidence, also an employment opportunity.
Now, Seoul's response has been cautious as officials avoid drawing broader conclusions from the summit, saying that it is too early to assess the implications of the military language or the absence of any reference to denuclearization. Seoul has continued to state that it hopes exchanges between Beijing and Pyongyang will contribute to peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula as well as Northeast Asia. But we really do have to see whether the summit remains largely a show of political solidarity or whether it leads into more concrete coordination.
I see. Soo-young, thank you for the coverage and thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me.